All right, guys, we have new renderings for the Buffalo Bills stadium that will be breaking ground this year and will be opening in the fall of 2026. Now, originally, you're looking at one of the photos that had previously been released last October. They re-released it, and it looks the exact same. The stadium with the awning over the top, the capacity sitting at around 62K, and then this was the other photo that has already been available. They just re-released it, and I think they changed the overall material used to build those buffalo statues in the front. And I mean, I think the exterior looks really good. I've seen some stuff on Twitter, on different social medias talking about it and what people really think of it. This is a newer picture that just got released yesterday. So you can see, I mean, it looks very clean. Looks kind of like a silver, futuristic type stadium from the outside. And I think, you know, for how big it is, it fits Buffalo well in that sense. We're seeing a lot of these exterior stadiums be very, very beautiful. The interior seems to be a little bit more generic. That's another shot more close up with the material that's used on the exterior part of the stadium. That photo right there. And then they did show a few photos of the interior, and it does a little bit kind of look like one of those Madden expansion franchise generic stadiums, the interior of it. But there's really only so many ways you can design a stadium when you think about it, so it looks like every seat relatively good. That's one of the big things with the NFL. You know, all of these newer stadiums that go up, they have bigger upper decks that start a lot lower. So they're trying to eliminate the really bad seats. They're trying to eliminate 4 or 5 decks of seats, which is something they've done, and it's really not hard to do if you go by a design. We've seen Allegiant do it, where they have a really, really big upper deck. SoFi is the complete opposite. They've got like 4 or 5 different decks of seats, but this is a rarity. You know, I really don't know the next time we're going to see a full outdoor stadium. The last 4 the last 4 NFL stadiums have all been domes or retractables, and then the Titans stadium is also a dome. So, you know, I like that they're doing the open air. In 20 or 30 years, this is probably going to be maybe one of 8 or one of 9 stadiums that still have open air. The reason that teams are going away from that, the overall fan experience, the idea of hosting a Super Bowl, and really other events. This is pretty much only made for football. I guess you could do soccer as well, but, you know, teams want to have a controlled climate, controlled environment on the interior, and a lot of, you know, I wouldn't say a lot, but there are Bills fans that are a little bit upset that this is open air. But you have to understand, this is Buffalo, New York. I mean, that's kind of the vibe, you know. If you go with a dome, I mean, it's kind of like the whole Detroit Lions thing. Like, it's like their team is almost disassociated from the city because they play in a dome and it's outside of the elements and stuff like that. Buffalo really wanted to keep that. They've had a number of games where it snows a lot and you get the snow on the field. And seeing a visual of that is something that's going to become more and more rare. You've got a lot of cold weather teams interested in building, you know, retractable roofs on top of the stadium already as well. So these are just some different photos of it to go through. I think the general vibe on it is the exterior is really nice. It just looks clean. It looks futuristic. It looks new. It looks like some type of silver glass, I would say. They do a really good job now on the outside of stadiums. And then the interior is a little more generic. It's a bigger 2-deck approach. But, you know, that's kind of the way now. They do have the awning coming out, covering, I believe the number was 80% of the fans. So 80% of the fans will have at least some covering from the snow. The field is going to completely be, you know, free of any coverage. So that as well. They tried to like do it in the middle, like give the fans some coverage from the elements while also still having an open air stadium, having snow within the stadium, and really kind of fitting that Buffalo culture. So those were the updated photos from the Bills' new stadium. We've got a few other things with the Tampa Bay Rays. St. Petersburg spending $250,000 to hire an outside law firm to negotiate a term sheet for the new Tampa Bay Rays stadium. And I just think this whole thing with Tampa Bay is a complete disaster. They've been trying to do this for the past 15 years. There's always some issue with it, and they're still playing in the Trop. And you know what? Recently, I was looking at all the MLB stadiums, and apparently the Trop is down to a capacity of 25K. This is borderline minor league stuff with the Trop. I mean, it's just, they've closed the upper deck for every home games now at the Trop with Tampa Bay. But here they go again, trying to keep the Rays in Florida when really there's just not a lot of demand for the MLB in Florida. There's just not. And you would think the MLB, once they get through all their contract negotiations between the players' union and the league, that's when the relocation of both the Rays and the Oakland Athletics will happen. The Athletics in virtually the same spot as the Rays. They've gone through about 10 different stadium renderings as well. They can't agree on a location. They can't get the money. I mean, when you're averaging 6,000 fans per game, it's going to be very hard to convince people to really do anything. And with Oakland, it's even more ugly because they're purposefully, I mean, I don't know what Oakland is doing. They're trading all their good players for mediocre prospects. They've made a number of really bad trades. Oakland A's form Athletic Investment Lobbying Group ahead of possible Vegas move. The A's are getting serious about a move to Vegas. The Valley, apparently, the MLB team, according to state records, has recently formed a lobbying group, and the A's president as well. Any hopes of Las Vegas luring a team from the Bay Area would hinge on whether it could get a new ballpark, which would cost around $1 billion to build. And apparently they would need public tax money as well, which is always a big hurdle when it comes to that. But I still think Vegas for sure will have an MLB team, an NBA team, and an NFL team by 2030 at the latest, probably a lot sooner than that. But that is the update on that. And then apparently the Arizona Diamondbacks I was seeing are looking at some type of maybe move out of their current stadium, which is totally prehistoric. I mean, you look at Chase Field, it is not a good place. They've got a massive wall of seats in the upper deck. You're either looking at, with Chase, a massive renovation, which is like, I'd say $300 or $400 million, or a possible move into a new stadium. Now, Chase Field isn't that old, so that makes things a little bit harder to get the funding. You know, why are you funding a stadium when Chase Field is perfectly fine? But in the general sense, that is I'd say a bottom 8 or 9 ballpark, and that's being nice, Chase Field. They got a really ugly giant batter's eye in center, and just the overall park is not up to standard when it comes to where that is. So just to recap, we do have the Bills' new pictures that came out, again, opening in 2026. And I mean, I'll say it's when you compare the Bills to the Titans, I like the Bills a little bit better. I like the Bills exterior. The Titans have that whole roof thing where they let natural light in. I think that's ugly personally. I understand why people do it with got to have the controlled environment. It's got to be 73 degrees. We got to have the Super Bowl, all that stuff. I read an article that maybe Wembley Stadium, actually, you know what? There was a tweet about different teams possibly getting the Super Bowl, like who's next in line. Future Super Bowl venues, rumored Levi Stadium. Keep it away from Levi. Wembley Stadium, so they'd go to London. And people ask, would they seriously go to London for a Super Bowl? If it makes money, they would do it. And if they were seriously considering a 4-team London, UK-based pod, what better way to introduce it? We're talking about down the line, maybe 2033, 2034, if they actually expanded. What better way to introduce a London, UK pod than to have the Super Bowl and then the teams move there the year after that? Because there's a huge American football following in Europe. MetLife Stadium, that's not going to happen. They got very lucky with MetLife when it was 50 degrees in New York. They're not doing that again. Lucas Oil, Lucas Oil is great. It's just cold out during February. AT&T, I definitely see Dallas getting one by 2030. The last one they hosted, I want to say, was the Packers-Steelers, Aaron Rodgers Super Bowl win. Ford Field, I doubt it, in Detroit. TIAA Stadium, no way. It would need an upgrade. I mean, Jacksonville, I guess, is a decent area, but that stadium would need a massive upgrade. And then NRG Stadium. I don't really like NRG. It's the Houston Texans Stadium. US Bank, they just hosted one. I'm guessing they'll probably be put on a rotation. Minnesota, it's freezing. Arrowhead, there's no way they would host one in Arrowhead. Lincoln Financial, there's no way. It's too cold. Bills' new stadium, there's no way. It's open air. Titans' new stadium, yes, that's part of the reason they're building the see-through roof, because they want to attract one. So I think the next Super Bowls, I was thinking about doing a video, the next 10 Super Bowls, predicting where they'll be. I think Lucas Oil could get one. They've hosted a number of massive events. AT&T Stadium is due when you look at the rotation to get another one in Dallas. I would say US Bank probably by 2031, 2032. That's still a brand new stadium. And then I would say the Titans' new stadium are the most likely in terms of getting in terms of getting the next Super Bowls. And then, of course, we do have teams probably renovating stadiums. We've got the Commanders right now going through that process of possibly selling. Although I did see that Jeff Bezos was apparently not allowed to buy the Washington Commanders because he owns the Washington Post or something like that. But guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.